Thank you.
No worries. So first a little correction, we aren't actually from the Acorn Trust. So the Acorns Trust is a children's charity. Acorn is a direct action tenants union. So slight difference, but yeah, we have to deal with that in Birmingham. So we're going to do a very shortish presentation today about Acorn. We're going to introduce Acorn, the foundations, a little bit of the history, a little bit of a history of Acorn in Birmingham, and then talking about the rebirth of Acorn as a tenants union in Birmingham, and updating everyone on our campaigns and activities so far, kicking off into the next actions in a few weeks. So, do you want to go through the introduction? You've got the history there.
Right, okay, so first off, yeah, I'm Sam, and I've been involved in Acorn for about 2.5 years, 3 years. I first started with Acorn as a paid organiser, trying to get it kicked off in Birmingham. We had a year to go and organise, we did that, and it didn't really work, so we had a bit of a rest, and we're back now as volunteers. So Acorn historically comes from America in the 70s, started by a guy called Wade Rathke and a couple of others who were trying to organise benefit claimants. So one of the first ever big Acorn actions was getting all benefit claimants together who were entitled to a winter clothing payment for their kids. But no one from the government told them that they were allowed to claim it. So Acorn organised all the claimants to go and claim it together in a show of like solidarity, and they did, and it started from there. So they very quickly realised that claimants are a very fast-changing group of people. People don't normally claim benefits for very long, so it was difficult to get a very effective organisation set up. So they started organising everyone and everything, so from farmers to tenants to workers, people who lived in a neighbourhood that had got abandoned bits of land. They organised for stuff useful for the community to be built there. So it just escalated from there really, and when Acorn stopped in America in about 2010 maybe, they had 500,000 paid members, and they were responsible for one of the biggest ever voter registration drives that's ever existed in the US. So there's a lot of stuff about Acorn and why it stopped in America for you to go and look up. So yeah, there's basically massive smear by Fox News, and they stopped and they started a thing called Acorn International. So that started, mainly the biggest place was Canada first and foremost, and they've had some really successful campaigns on both housing and payday lenders. So they've managed to collectively organise to have a lot of the laws changed around such high rates of interest and the targeted advertising of payday lenders in Canada. They've organised tenants and students and housing projects from Italy to South America, street traders in India, just you name it. If there's a group of people that need organising on something, Acorn have tried and in a lot of time successfully done it. So the way that we organise is through neighbourhood-based organising firstly. So a group of people who are concerned about a particular subject, or it could just be anything, getting together and putting pressure on the people who make the decisions about that. So whether it's with housing, whether it's a council or a particular landlord, everybody who's affected by that getting together and putting collective pressure on them to change it. So we started Acorn in Bristol about 4 years ago now.
4 years.
We think it's 4. I'm not very well read up on it. But yeah, we started 4 years ago in Bristol. So we started as a general community union. So because a lot of us had experienced, I'd done a lot of care work and pub work, and there wasn't really very much in terms of workplace, trade union stuff going on. So the idea was to bring the idea of union into neighbourhoods and communities, and for anybody who lives there to be able to get involved. So we started as just a general community union, and we went round knocking on lots of doors and realised it was very difficult to pin down a subject. So with the housing crisis increasing and housing being something that affects everybody, we decided to take on housing. So at that time, there was the main branch started in Bristol, and then very, very quickly we had paid organisers in London, Newcastle, Reading,
Sheffield.
and in Birmingham. No, Sheffield. So then, Johnny from London, there's already so much tenant stuff going on in London, I found it very difficult in some ways. So Johnny went, it was very expensive for him to live there as well, so we went back up to Sheffield, and that's how Sheffield Acorn started, which is one of our biggest branches now. So when we started in 2015, we started knocking doors in Borsal Heath and the surrounding areas. And we talked to people about hundreds of issues, from, you know, stuff that doesn't seem massively political, like litter and stuff on the area and nuisance neighbours, to stuff that actually could be affected, like dangerous bit of road where there was accidents every few months. So we realised that even if it didn't seem like a huge political thing, that it could be made it by getting everybody in the neighbourhood to act together. But because that had mixed success, so we decided to take on housing as our main issue. So when we started again, we moved to like Bearwood sort of area, Swethick, and we talked to about 2,000 renters in less than a year, and we had the same issues coming up again: damp, mould, disrepair. Landlord doesn't do anything. Every time somebody complains, they get served a Section 21. Councils aren't able to, because they haven't got the capacity, to serve enforcement notices to every landlord who isn't doing what they're meant to be doing. So people are still getting revenge evictions, even though the legislation was meant to help prevent that. We've found that that hasn't been the case. There was some really good research done by the Labour Party that they found that, you know, there was just a very, very small amount of enforcement going on, and people were still subject to revenge eviction every time that they complained, because the landlord can get them out in 8 weeks, get someone else in who doesn't know about the problems with the house, and a short 6-month lease, and then the whole process starts again. So in Bristol, in the meantime, they've been building with a core group of members who they've recruited, and it's not really the organisers doing the work, it's the people who get involved as volunteers who are they're running all the campaigns. They decide what we're campaigning on, and they've been massively effective. They've blocked evictions, they've won hundreds of thousands of pounds in refunds for repairs. They've actually stopped bailiffs from going into people's homes. There was a great video of that a couple of weeks ago. And in addition to direct action and casework and helping individual tenants, something else that they've been doing is then getting involved with the local councils and actually doing citywide campaigns where they are now affecting housing and how it's run on a city level. So we're seeing that to be the case in Bristol and Sheffield the most at the moment, and Manchester. Selective landlord licensing is becoming a possibility in all 3 of those cities, and it is through the pressure of having a huge group of tenants and people who support tenants by making this happen. So where we are in Birmingham at the moment is we started back up in January this year. We tried to do it as a volunteer group, but I mean, it's very important to be honest about it. We went to an area where we thought it would be great in Bearwood. There's lots of renters there. Demographically, it looked ace. Lots of private renters. It didn't really work, and we tried it, and we just had to take a step back and reflect. So we knew people who were Acorn members who'd been paid up because they liked the idea since it started, and they've had 10-year dispute with with the freeholder of their building about damp and mould and disrepair. So we decided that was the best place to start, and that's in Sturchley. So before we even got up and running, we had a campaign, and we started, and we went and spoke to all the people that live in that block of flats, and they all decided it was a good idea to join Acorn, and they all joined us, and they're still our members, and we're still fighting that campaign now. So what's happening with that is the freeholder of the building has not done any repair to the roof, or there's water all in the building, there's green mould growing everywhere, there was rubbish piled outside and rats everywhere. The outside of the building's actually green. People have got water running down the walls. People have painted, and 3 weeks later, green mould's back. We stood and watched a man's ceiling collapse from a neglected leak that had just been left into his children's bedroom. And, you know, it sounds completely Victorian, but this is Sturchley and right now. And these aren't cheap flats. People are paying £525, £550 a month to live in these conditions. And there is a person who's legally responsible who just has completely flouted all that and decided that he doesn't want to do it because it's going to cost him too much money. So we have met with him, we've got local councillor involved, we've spoken to the environmental health. The environmental health have about 4 times said that it's an unenforceable situation when the tenants have complained on their own. And that's changed now. So what's happened now is the environmental health have agreed with what we've said needs to be done to the building, and we're now in the process of putting more pressure on him to change that. So next Saturday, 12 till 2, on Pershaw Road, where the big gorilla is, on JJ's carpets, we're having a picket there.
Do you know where he lives?
We don't know where he lives, but we know where his business is. It's underneath the flats. So we're going to go and have a big gorilla theme picket outside his. Because it's where that. I bet he does, yeah. But he's got his £7,500 gorilla on the roof that they paid to be put, craned onto there when people are living inside like that. So it's just not acceptable, really. So yeah, next week that'll be our first direct action against him, and hope we can put some pressure on him to be more reasonable. Cheers.
Quick conclusion as well. So sort of now we're coming back. The strategies we have sort of developed and discussed it so far is going to be building in Sturchley for a prolonged sort of campaign in order to build a base, which is quite often the problem which a lot of groups kind of don't have before if they flip between too many areas supporting, as many unions do in terms of supporting casework, like the IWW and these kinds of unions. They don't build in an area, if they don't build in a workplace, they don't have any power. So we're developing a strategy to build specifically in Sturchley for the next year. We're going to build particularly around casework, continuing cases and picking on the different bits of casework that comes out of the tenants that we're already supporting. And the final thing to emphasise is that we already are winning. So, we sent a letter at the beginning of March, and he was terrified, we just said, Google us, We've got plenty of videos on YouTube, you can see what we do in other cities. And he fixed the rubbish wall. He literally had a wall that he made to fill with rubbish. That was all gotten rid of. The rubbish wall was destroyed, the rats were getting rid of. He replaced the windows that were missing. Yes, there were not actual windows inside the flats. The doors have been redone. But the final push now is to get him to fix that roof, because it's still causing the penetrative damp and it's still causing the mould, the damp, that's the real health problem to our members and their kids as well, which is the major thing. So yeah, if you ask us questions and come down next weekend, thank you very much.